Hello everyone, I'm Scott Vaughn. Some people come into this world with huge opportunities. Others have a fight ahead of them. Either way, it's on you to whether you'll make it or not. My parents didn't give me a head start. I'm not complaining, but I had to learn to run like there's an exit sign lit up in a burning building for me. My father, he was murdered when I was 3 years old. He decided he wanted to be a big cocaine dealer out of New Mexico. He made a life he didn't want to give up. Well, all it took was one late payment, and he got 2 in the chest and 1 in the head. So fatherless and with a mother addicted to crack cocaine, my future was looking promising. In the beginning, my mother had work in an apartment in Bellevue. Things seemed okay. But when I was 6, she lost her job, and we moved into my grandmother's house. We spent 2 years there. Life was great. It was probably the happiest time of my childhood. My grandmother was a very big influence on my life. She never pushed it on me. Everything she said just stuck. Always remember college, but to get to college, you have to pass high school. And good credit means opportunity. But when I was 8, my grandmother was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she went into chemotherapy. My aunts and uncles asked my mother to move out due to her drug addiction, and this is when the road no longer seemed smooth. We stayed in a 2-seat car for a night, and we started living in shelters and couch surfing. As an excuse, my mother would tell people she was being stalked. She told me the same thing. This went on for years. We lived in places for as much as 6 months. I changed schools 7 times by the time I was in middle school. But then my grandmother passed, and things never seemed to let up. I've seen every drug used, heroin needles stabbed into legs. Other things, I held a gun in my hand by the time I was 10 because somebody thought it'd be funny. Around 12, I started doing things I really didn't want to do. I was stealing, robbing, selling drugs. We needed the money, and the life we had was the life we had. But I just didn't want to lose it. When I was in high school, my mother did get a job. She found an apartment, but she soon lost the job, and we were fighting to keep the apartment. One day we got into an argument about rent. I was 15, and she tried to fight me. I called my family, and I ended up with my uncle down in Vancouver, Washington, and I thought my struggles were over. I started working hard to put the past behind me. I did well at school. I was named Student of the Month. I went to church and church youth groups 3 times a week. When my mother and I had the fight, Child Protective Services were brought in, and I had to take UAs once a week. Urine analysis for drugs. And there was never a single dirty UA because there's no way there ever would have been. I felt welcomed at church and at school. I had friends. Even though I was doing everything they asked, no one in my family ever recognized it. I got no compliments on my hard work. I felt out of place, like I was being looked down at. They decided who I was the day I moved in. Well, after about a year, I skipped school one day to hang out with my girlfriend and got caught. My uncle was angry, very angry. So angry he was afraid he was going to put his hands on me. So he took me to a group home he knew about, and he drove me down there that night. He came back the next day and filled out the paperwork and told me I couldn't come back. So I called my CPS worker, and I asked to be transferred to my hometown, Seattle. She brought me to adolescent shelter at YouthCare. Stayed there for about 3 to 4 months. Then I got into a place I could call home. I lived there for 2 years at Pathways YouthCare, and it was the first place in my life that I felt I didn't have to worry about tomorrow. I was given freedom and responsibility at the same time. I was able to be me, and I started to get a lot done. I met Representative Mary Lou Dickerson, and I understand she's here today. We talked, and she asked if I'd like to work on Walk a Mile with her and to support a campaign for foster care to 21. I said, sure, I'd really like to do that. I finished high school with the honor cord. You get to wear this during graduation for academic achievement. Thank you. There are 2 of us that year. I had a GPA of 3.8. I got to finish high school, and I got help finding scholarships, and I went out and found scholarships. I was able to put together about $18,000 a year for 5 years, including the Governor's Scholarship, awards from Washington Education Foundation, Simon Youth Foundation, Treehouse, and Rotary. When I turned 18, I left Pathways, and I thought I had found the woman that would help me along my life, and who I'd help on hers. We moved in together, but after a while, she became pregnant. I was in college, and I knew I had to stay in college. I could only work part-time, but the scholarships would make it easier. We were gonna be all right. Things were nice. But then it turned out I might not be the father. I found out later I wasn't. I still stay in touch for the boys' sake, but we split up. And I suddenly had nowhere to go again. So I turned back to youth care. I was now 19, and I couldn't go back to Pathways, but I knew of an adult residence, and I contacted Curtis at Passages. He told me he had no openings, but he knew of a place that was a better fit for me. Home of Hope. They are apartments, 2-bedroom shares. So I called John at Home of Hope, and he told me there was one opening and many applicants. I didn't really think I'd make it, but to my surprise, John called me a few days later. He told me I was given high recommendation by other youth care staff. I didn't expect that, but it's true. Sometimes staff would call on me if there was a problem or an issue with 2 residents. Maybe they couldn't get it done, they would ask me to step in and help talk. I was in a good place there. So I got the spot and I moved in and once again felt worry-free. I stayed in school and I got my first credit card and used it right. That was my grandmother speaking. During my stay there, at one of our monthly meetings, a man came in to talk about programs at Shoreline Community College. And that day I found out what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to their automotive program. That's a professional automotive training center at Shoreline. Some people say it's the best technician training program in the country. I went there the day after I heard about it, and I thought the man I was talking to was a teacher, but it turned out to be the program director, Don Schultz. We ended up talking for about 25 minutes, but he told me I'd have to talk to one of the teachers about getting in. Well, apparently there was no room available, and besides, classes started next week. But I wouldn't take no for an answer. He was busy, so I politely followed him around and made my case. I kept asking him, what do I have to do to get in? He finally said, all right, you'll have to do 3 things, and you have until the end of the week. I had to go back to North Seattle Community College and arrange for a transfer to Shoreline. I had to get a job at a local dealership, and I'd have to pass his test. I left the room at noon, and I went back the next day, and I said, I'm registered, and I will be working for Bill Pierre Chevrolet. I know he was confused. I know he didn't think I'd be back so soon. So I asked for the test, and he mostly just talked to me. Well, I love cars, but I didn't know a lot about how to work on them at that point. I only knew is what I wanted to do. When I walked out, I wasn't sure how I had done, so I went back the next day and the next. Until Friday, he said, okay, you're in. There are a lot of students who knew more about cars than I did, but pretty quickly, I started finishing assignments first. We'd each have to test and tear down systems, engines, transmissions, drivetrains, electrical, whatever, and rebuild them on our own. If something needed to be fixed, we'd fix it. And I would finish first, time after time, often a day ahead of everybody else. I guess he started to notice because at one point he asked me if I'd like to work on an engine for him. It was a $20,000 race engine for his race team's hydroplane. That was interesting. When I graduated, I received Most Improved Technician Award. Meanwhile, I left Home of Hope and got into an apartment with the help of Youth Care. They had a program back then that helped you pay rent half the first month and then less and less each month until you're on your own. I had my scholarships and I was working part-time at the dealership, but I don't know if I would have made it without their help. I graduated with a 3.6, getting my associate's degree and a certificate in GM ASEP. I found another job that would pay better and I applied for my second credit card, and I was red flagged. They said my credit score was too good for a 21-year-old. It raised suspicion. It felt good to hear that. They ended up giving me the card, But the economy fell and I got laid off. I applied for unemployment and was given $800 a month when rent was $745. I had decided I had to go to DSHS for food stamps, but they could only offer me $23 a month. I declined it. It was so little I felt laughed at as a hardworking man. But I did find a job within a month, a job that would give me a chance to grow. I started January 4th, 2010 at Waltz Auto Care Center in their Aurora location. 6 months later, they made me assistant manager. And 6 months after that, I became the youngest store manager they ever had anywhere in the company in 19 locations. I was 22. I've been manager for 2 years now. Each year, sales and gross margins have improved. It's about building relationships and quality work. Last month, I bought a house. I'm so proud, I'd wave my keys at you. Four bedrooms, 2 stories, 2-car garage. I have 2 Honda Civics, a 10-second race car, 2 Classics, and a Chevy Suburban to tow my toys. I know now that I really have found the woman of my dreams. We've been together for almost 2 years now, and I couldn't be happier. The thing is, none of this might not have happened if it wasn't for YouthCare. I've been told it wasn't YouthCare that did it, it was me. And I guess that's right. Even so, the feeling of family, the safety, worry-free, and the direction along my path, those things allowed me to find my path and feel secure in following it. From my statistic, I could be dead or in prison. Instead, I am where I am today. I want to thank YouthCare for that. And I want to thank people like you who keep YouthCare alive. So much comes to mind right now. I'm proud. Proud of what I've accomplished. Proud of seeing the things I've seen and not let it affect who I am. I am now what I wanted to become. Many times I've wanted to give up. I feel like I've been fighting for so long to the point where I'll be chasing down a path and I'll stop and complain. I've got so much further to go. But I look back and I say, I've gone further already than I need to go. And the path behind me is worse than the path in front of me. I just have to keep going. There are other people like me. They have fought, they are fighting to get to the same place. When it's all over and done with, you just have to know that you did what you wanted to do, and you fought for it. I know that my fight was meant to be. I fought for a reason. I've been through a lot. It was hard, but I'd do it again. I don't regret anything. I'm happy where I am today, and I'm happy with who I am today. Thank you for listening.